It was supposed to be just another unforgettable night of music, magic, and moonwalks. More than 75,000 fans filled the stadium, screaming Michael Jackson's name as he performed under the glowing lights. But halfway through his set, something happened that brought the entire show to a sudden, terrifying stop. A young woman near the front row collapsed, fainting in the middle of the excitement. At first, the crowd thought it was just a usual reaction to seeing the King of Pop so close thousands of fans had passed out at his concerts before. But this time, Michael noticed. Right in the middle of a song, he froze. The music continued. The dancers hesitated. The spotlight followed his gaze into the crowd, and suddenly, every camera in the stadium locked onto one scene. A fan lying motionless on the ground, her friend screaming for help. Security rushed in, but Michael didn't wait. He did something no one, not the band, not the audience, not even his team, was prepared for. He stopped the show. He dropped the microphone. He walked straight off the stage to save a fan's life. What he told her when she finally opened her eyes, an emotional moment that unfolded, left the entire stadium in tears, and changed one girl's life forever. You are about to witness the night the King of Pop proved his heart was even bigger than his fame. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on all notifications so you never miss our emotional and inspiring stories about the one and only Michael Jackson. The stadium lights burned brighter than stars that night. The sold-out crowd of 90,000 fans pulsed like a single living heart, chanting his name, waving signs, crying tears of joy before a single note was played. It was the kind of electric energy that only Michael Jackson could create. The year was 1997, during the History World Tour in Munich. Michael stood backstage, wrapped in a glittering gold military-style jacket, breathing slowly to steady his nerves. He was always nervous before a show, not because he feared mistakes, but because he wanted to give every single person an unforgettable moment. Tonight was no different. He whispered to himself, a private prayer, he said, before each performance. God, let me give them love. The stage director called. 30 seconds. Michael nodded. He pulled on his black gloves and flexed his fingers. A ritual grounding. He could hear the fans chanting louder now. Michael, Michael, Michael. He smiled gently. They are my family, he whispered. Then the countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, boom. The pyrotechnics exploded, and Michael shot up from beneath the stage like a comet breaking through Earth's atmosphere. The crowd's roar shook the stadium. He stood frozen in the signature pose, chin lifted, sunglasses reflecting the ocean of fans before him. He didn't move for 40 seconds. He didn't need to. His presence alone commanded the world. As Scream began blasting through the speakers, Michael removed the glasses with flick, sliding into his first dance move with that impossible precision only he possessed. Every spin, every glide electrified the air. But then, a commotion in the front row. Michael noticed between moves, a young girl pressing forward too hard against a barricade. At first, he thought she was cheering, but then her arms fell limp. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. Security rushed forward. Fans screamed. A ripple of panic spread. Michael missed a step, something he never did. His eyes locked onto the scene. A girl maybe 12 or 13 years old, unconscious, pale, trapped beneath the force of the crowd pressing inward, desperate to get closer to him. Back up. Give her space, one guard shouted, but the music drowned his voice. Michael removed his in-ear monitor, eyes narrowing. Concern replaced performance instinct in a heartbeat. He turned off mic to a stage assistant. Is she okay? No answer. They didn't know. The choreography continued. He was supposed to leap into the next sequence, but he didn't. Instead, he moved to the edge of the stage, ignoring every planned cue, ignoring the cameras tracking him, ignoring the panicked voices in his earpiece telling him to stay on script. He pointed directly at the girl. Her. Help her. The band faltered in confusion. Michael was never off cue. Dancers looked around, unsure whether to freeze or continue. But Michael didn't wait. He jumped down from the stage. The crowd lost control. Security scrambled to hold them back. Fans cried, reaching for Michael, but he only had one focus. the girl lying motionless near the barricade. 2 paramedics finally pushed through, checking her pulse. Michael knelt beside them, his gold outfit shimmering under the spotlight now solely aimed at him and the girl. Sweat dripped from his brow, not from dancing, but from fear. "Is she breathing?" he asked, voice cracking. One medic nodded. "Weak pulse. She's overheated and crushed by crowd pressure. We need to move her now." Michael gently touched the girl's cheek. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" he whispered. She didn't respond. Michael looked up at the medics with a pleading expression. "Please save her. Whatever you need, I'll help." The show, the cameras, the schedule, all forgotten. They lifted the girl carefully. Michael stood and signaled to the conductor to stop the music. The entire stadium fell silent. 90,000 fans watched the King of Pop break his own show to save one girl. Michael spoke softly into his microphone. "Please, everyone step back. Let her breathe. She needs your love. She came here to see me, so we must protect her." Fans listened. They stepped back. They made room. They calmed down. Michael walked beside the medics as they carried her along the catwalk tunnel leading backstage. His heartbeat felt louder than the earlier explosions. He couldn't take his eyes off her, a fragile young life placed in his hands by fate. As they disappeared behind the curtain, Michael turned to Kenny Ortega, who rushed forward. "We should take a break," Kenny urged. "Let's handle this." Michael shook his head firmly. "I'm not going anywhere until I know she's okay." The band awaited instruction. The crowd waited in breathless confusion. Michael stood backstage, chest heaving, hands shaking. A part of him felt responsible, as if his love from fans caused this girl's collapse. He never wanted his presence to harm a soul. Minutes passed. Each one felt like a lifetime. A medic finally approached, expression unreadable. Michael stepped forward, voice fragile. "Is she?" The medic took a breath, preparing to speak. But before he could answer, a scream erupted from the stadium. Not of excitement, but of terror. Michael spun around, confusion and dread flooding him. Something else was happening out there. Something much worse. The stadium roared like a living beast, its heartbeat pounding for the floorboards beneath Michael's feet. Fireworks exploded above the stage as the final chords of Billie Jean faded into a symphony of screams and applause. Michael stood at the center of the glowing platform, chest rising and falling beneath his jeweled jacket, sweat glistening like diamonds under the blinding lights. Everywhere he looked, he saw hands reaching toward him, fans crying, jumping, fainting from the intensity of the experience. He smiled, a soft, humble smile, because despite everything the world had put him through, he never stopped loving the people who loved him back. But then something changed. Amid the sea of faces and fluttering signs, a sudden commotion stirred roughly 10 rows from front. At first, Michael thought it was just another fan overwhelmed by the moment, a scene he had seen countless times throughout his career. But this wasn't like the others. Security guards rushed toward a young woman collapsing onto the barricade. Her arms were limp, head hanging back, her face dangerously pale. Fans around her called out, waving frantically toward the stage. Michael's eyes locked on her immediately. The dancers were already lining up behind him for the next cue. The show had to go on, but something inside him refused to move. His music director waited for a signal, confused by the delay. Michael took one step forward, forcing himself to focus through the adrenaline rushing in his veins. "Stop the music," he whispered into his mic. The band faltered, the sound collapsing awkwardly as dancers halted mid-formation. The audience, thousands deep, grew confused, buzzing, questioning, looking around. Michael lifted a hand, signaling for silence. His expression changed. No longer the confident performer leading an electrifying show. Now he was simply Michael, a human being. And he was worried. Lights tracked his gaze toward the girl. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow and uneven. Security struggled to move through the tightly packed crowd. Without hesitation, Michael stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "Is she okay?" he called out, his voice echoing across the stadium. Those nearest turned, surprised that he was talking directly to them. A fan shouted back, "She fainted. Please help her." Michael glanced at his head of security, who rushed to coordinate paramedics. But even with an entire team on site, help was moving too slow. Michael's heartbeat picked up again, but not for performance. He climbed down from the platform. The crowd gasped, some screamed, as their idol stepped off the elevated stage and into the real world, where perfection didn't matter and where pain could not be ignored. No! Sir, wait. A guard began, but Michael was already pushing past him. The energy in the stadium shifted entirely. Instead of roaring excitement, the air filled with fear and awe. When he reached her, he knelt beside her, ignoring the flashes of cameras and thousands of eyes locked on his every move. The girl, no older than maybe 18, lay unconscious, chest rising only faintly. Her hand still clutched the poster she had been waving moments before. It read, "Michael, you saved my life." Michael's heart twisted. He brushed a strand of hair away from her damp forehead. "You're okay, sweetheart. We're gonna help you, okay?" His voice was gentle but trembling. Fans around him began crying. They had never seen him like this. This wasn't a planned interaction. This was vulnerability. This was fear. This was Michael Jackson, the man who felt too deeply. The paramedics finally arrived, kneeling across from him. "We've got her, Mr. Jackson," one assured. "No," Michael whispered. "I've got her too." The paramedics checked her pulse and began giving her oxygen. Michael stayed close, refusing to stand until he knew she was safe. For a moment, the massive stadium seemed to shrink into a small, intimate room. Just Michael and a young fan who needed him more than any spotlight ever could. He noticed his own hands shaking. It was rare that he allowed himself to feel panic in public. Years of being in the spotlight had trained him to hide fear. But tonight, he couldn't stop it. "Will she be all right?" he asked, voice cracked. "Yes," the medic replied. "It looks like dehydration and shock. We're taking her to the medic station." Michael exhaled the breath he'd been holding, relief washing over him. But then a thought struck him. She came here for him. She fainted because of him. His fame brought her to this moment of danger. His expression darkened with guilt. He stood slowly, brushing his hands against his pants, grounding himself. The audience remained completely silent, waiting, trembling, overwhelmed by the vulnerability of what they were witnessing. Michael turned toward them, took a moment to breathe, then lifted the mic again. "What we do here tonight," he said softly, voice amplified into the thick stillness, "means nothing if we forget to take care of each other. Thank you for your love. But please be safe. I don't want to lose any of you." Tears rolled down faces across the stadium. Michael looked back one last time as the gurney was wheeled out of sight, and something inside him cracked just a little more. As the light slowly shifted and the music director awaited his cue to resume, Michael felt the weight of the moment settle into his chest. He was adored, but he couldn't protect everyone. The show must go on. That was what he'd always been told. But tonight, he found himself questioning, at what cost? And the real fear wasn't that she fainted. It was what might happen next. The stadium was still in chaos. Security guards rushed back and forth. Medics carried oxygen tanks, and thousands of voices blended into nervous murmurs. The giant screens no longer showed the concert. They showed her. The young fan Michael had stopped everything for. But Michael's eyes never left the scene below. He waited in the middle of the stage, still frozen in the spotlight, hat in his hand, sweat dripping down the back of his neck, and fear tightening every muscle in his body. His heart was still racing, not from performing, but from something he couldn't explain. Something about her collapse felt wrong. Like it wasn't just a faint. Like it wasn't just exhaustion. Like she was calling him, without words. His fingers trembled. Who was she? Why did she seem familiar? And why did he feel this overwhelming need to help her personally? He looked over to his tour manager, who stood near the monitor tent. "I'm going down there," Michael said. The manager rushed to him, shaking his head. "Michael, no. You can't. We have procedures. There are thousands of people watching." But Michael cut him off. "I don't care about procedures. A human being needs help." The manager lowered his voice urgently. "Security can handle this." Michael's eyes darkened. Then why hasn't she opened her eyes yet? The manager had no answer. And Michael didn't wait for permission. He stepped off the stage platform and headed quickly toward the stairs leading down to the pit area. Security followed anxiously, trying to keep fans from reaching over the barricades as Michael passed. Cheers erupted around him, but his expression remained deadly serious. Every second mattered. When he reached the floor, medics were still kneeling around her. Michael crouched beside them. "How is she?" he asked, breathless. One of the medics looked up, startled by his presence. "She's not responding. Pulse is weak. We've given her oxygen, but—" Michael reached out, gently brushing his fingertips against the back of her hand. Her skin was cold. Too cold. "Can you hear me?" he whispered to her. The medic sighed. "We should transport her backstage to get her stabilized." Michael nodded. "Let me go with her." The medic looked uncomfortable. "Sir, that's not procedure." Michael turned his head slowly, his voice quiet but firm. "Please, I'm not asking as a performer." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm asking as a person who cares." The medic hesitated, then nodded. Security quickly formed a barrier around the stretcher as they lifted her. Fans screamed, cried, and reached out to the barricade for Michael. Some were confused. Some were fearful. But all of them knew this moment would become a memory the world would talk about forever. As they took her through a tunnel beneath the stage, the noise from the audience faded into a distant echo. The hallway was colder, lit with a flickering fluorescent light. The stretcher wheels rattled over the concrete floor. Michael walked beside her, hands still wrapped around hers. Then, a jolt. Her fingers twitched. Michael gasped softly. "Hey! Hey, can you hear me?" he whispered. Her eyes fluttered, not open, but moving beneath her eyelids. She squeezed his hand faintly. Michael felt tears start to build. "You're safe," he said. "You're going to be okay." But her lips parted and she exhaled a small, weak sound. A single word, barely audible. "Danger." Michael leaned closer. What did you say?" Her brow tensed. Her breathing became uneven. "Danger around you." The medics exchanged alarmed looks. Michael's heart nearly stopped. Who was she talking about? Was she hallucinating? Or did she know something? Before he could ask again, her body jolted. A violent, sudden seizure that made one of the medics shout, "Stop moving. Hold her steady." They rushed her into the backstage treatment room, equipment beeping wildly as they worked to stabilize her. Michael stepped back, chest tight, tears finally spilling from the corners of his eyes. Somewhere behind him, the tour manager arrived, panicked. "Michael, you have to come back. The fans, the cameras, this is turning into a PR nightmare." Michael ignored him entirely. He watched the medics place a mask over the girl's mouth, watched her chest rise slower and slower. A second medic inserted an IV line into her arm. He whispered to himself, Don't leave me wondering." Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, one medic stepped away and sighed in relief. "She's stable for now." Michael let out the breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. But then, she slowly opened her eyes. A single tear slid down her temple. She turned her head weakly toward Michael, like she was searching for him again, and when she finally locked eyes with him, her lips moved with trembling effort. "I tried to warn you." Michael froze. Warn him? Of what? Before he could respond, monitors began alarming sharply again. Her body went limp. Her pulse dropped. Medics sprang into chaos. No, come on. Stay with us." Michael's entire world tilted. His heart slammed into his ribcage. "Help her," he begged. "Please." The medics shouted for more equipment. But the sound became distant, fading beneath the pounding in Michael's ears. He grabbed the side of the stretcher, voice breaking. Don't go yet. Please." Her eyes, once so full of life, were slowly going blank. She had come to see him perform. She had waited for this night her entire life. And now she might die because of it. Security moved toward Michael, trying to pull him away as paramedics began chest compressions. "No, I'm not leaving her," he yelled. Tears streamed down his face as he watched helplessly. Her last word echoed in his mind like a ghost. "Warn you." Warn him about what? And why did he feel like this night was about to get much worse? The world outside that tiny stadium medical room kept screaming his name. Michael, Michael, Michael. But inside those narrow white walls, everything was silent. Everything slowed. Everything became frighteningly real. Michael Jackson stared at the unconscious girl lying on the stretcher. The soft beeps coming from the monitors tracked a heartbeat that felt too fragile, too uncertain. He could still feel the weight of her body when he caught her. Limp, breath shallow, life slipping. And Michael... Kenny Ortega whispered behind him. Security is waiting. We need to move you to the safe area backstage. Michael didn't respond. He didn't step away. He didn't even blink. He was frozen in place, unable to leave her. He finally spoke, barely above a breath. What's her name? One of the medics replied, flipping through her ID quickly. Her name is Emily Carter. 17. He had exhaustion and likely extreme emotional excitement. She's in shock. Michael's stomach twisted. She had come to see him, to celebrate him, and instead she was fighting to breathe. It felt wrong, deeply wrong. The medic gently tried to guide Michael away. It's better she wakes up without too much stimulation. She might panic. Michael shook his head. She needs calm. She needs reassurance. She's scared even if she can't show it right now. Kenny stepped forward again. Michael, the crowd is waiting. They're already chanting for you. The show isn't over yet. Michael kept his eyes on Emily. He knew the rules of fame, the expectations. He knew the show always had to go on. But tonight, he wanted to break the rules. He turned his head slightly toward Kenny. That young girl almost died because she loves this show, because she loves me. His hands shook as he said the next words. I won't walk away from her. Kenny looked torn, admiring him, but terrified of consequences. Just give me 5 more minutes, Michael pleaded. 5 minutes. Kenny exhaled, defeated but respectful. 5 minutes. Then we reevaluate. He stepped out, closing the door softly behind him. Michael sat down beside Emily and slowly took her hand. Her skin was cold, almost lifeless under his touch. He brushed a few strands of hair away from her forehead and whispered gently, You're safe now. I'm right here. You did nothing wrong. Her breathing hitched faintly, a sign she heard him, somewhere inside. Michael smiled, even as his eyes filled with tears. You came here to see magic, but you're the magical one. You're strong. You're loved. And I'm not leaving until you open those beautiful eyes. Outside the room, security radios buzzed. People argued. Time ticked mercilessly. Inside, Michael hummed softly. A lullaby. Not a hit song. Not a performance. A lullaby his mother used to sing when he was overwhelmed by the world. A melody no fan had ever heard. He squeezed her hand gently, voice trembling. The world can be loud, but your heart is louder. Come back to us, Emily. Then, a tiny movement. Her fingers twitched. Michael leaned forward instantly, breath caught in his throat. The medic rushed back inside. She's responding. Emily's eyelids fluttered, her chest rising more steadily. Her voice was tiny, dry, afraid. Where am I? You're safe, Michael said softly, holding her hand with both of his. You fainted at the concert, but you're okay now. Her eyes finally focused enough to see him. The shock hit first, disbelief, then tears. And Michael? She whispered. Yes, he smiled softly. It's me. She tried to sit up, but the medic gently kept her still. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry about anything except breathing, okay? No one expects anything from you right now. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't mean to ruin your concert. Michael's heart broke. He shook his head firmly, but gently. No, you didn't ruin anything. You reminded me why I sing, why I dance, why I do this at all. He whispered closer. Because of love like yours. Emily covered her mouth, crying silently. Michael glanced at the medic. Is she stable? Yes, the medic nodded. But she needs water, rest, and a calmer environment. Michael stood slowly. Then she stays here, and I will come back to check on her after the show." Emily frowned weakly, confused. "You're going back on stage?" Michael nodded. "Only because I can tell now that you're going to be okay." He squeezed her hand one more time. "Promise me something, Emily." She swallowed. "Anything. Promise me you'll stay strong. Promise me you'll never push yourself past what your heart can take. And promise me you'll remember tonight, not for fear, but for hope." Emily nodded through tears. "I promise." Michael felt his own tears fall, but he didn't wipe them away. The medic smiled. "There she is. She's going to be fine." Michael exhaled, relief flooding through him. Then the door opened again. Security. Lights. Noise pouring in. The king of pop was needed again. Michael looked one more time at Emily. "Save me a smile for after the show, okay?" He winked softly. "I'm dancing this next part for you." Emily smiled, weak but real. Michael stepped out of the room. One foot already back in the spotlight, the other still rooted in the humanity that defined him far more than his fame ever could. The tunnel to the stage stretched before him, loud, chaotic, and blinding. But he whispered to himself, "She came back, now I have to, too." He straightened his jacket, took a steadying breath, and walked toward the roar of 90,000 hearts beating as one. The music was about to start again, but everything had changed. Michael knelt beside her as the chaos around them faded into a distant hum. The stage, once filled with overwhelming cheers and music, now felt like a fragile bubble holding only two people. A terrified fan fighting for air and the most famous entertainer alive, refusing to let her slip away. The medical team worked quickly, but Michael wasn't ready to step back. He watched the young woman's eyes flutter open and close, fighting consciousness like a candle flickering in the wind. He reached for her hand again, soft but steady, grounding her back to reality. "You're okay," he whispered, voice trembling. "Stay with me, please." Her breathing hitched, controlled by the oxygen mask, but still uneven. A medic looked at Michael and spoke in a rushed voice. "We need to get her backstage where she can lie down properly. The noise and heat are overwhelming her system." Michael stood instantly. "Then I'm going with her." The crew hesitated. That wasn't common protocol. Artists didn't leave the stage mid-show, especially Michael Jackson. But the look in his eyes made something clear. This wasn't a superstar right now. This was a man who refused to abandon someone who needed help. With a nod from a head medic, they lifted the young woman onto a stretcher and began guiding her toward the backstage tunnel. The thunderous audience, thousands of frantic fans, were confused, shouting his name, demanding to know what was happening. Michael paused and walked back toward the center of the stage for just a moment. He lifted his hands gently, palms open, a universal signal asking for calm. The crowd quieted almost instantly. The security lights swept across a sea of worried faces. "I'll be right back," Michael said into his microphone, voice soft but booming through the arena. "We have a friend here who needs me." The simplicity of the statement stunned the audience. Not a fan. Not a medical emergency. A friend. Applause erupted, not with excitement, but respect. As Michael stepped off stage, he heard someone yell through their tears, "We love you, Michael." The entire arena followed, a wave of love strong enough to shake the walls. But Michael didn't look back. He was focused only on the girl being wheeled toward the medical room backstage. Inside the medical room, the harsh stage lights were replaced with softer ones. Technicians moved quickly, checking monitors, adjusting cables, making sure the air conditioning helped stabilize her temperature. Michael hovered anxiously. What's happening to her? "She fainted from heat exhaustion and emotional shock," the medic replied. "Her heart rate is still too fast, but she's stabilizing." Michael's jaw clenched. That wasn't good enough. He stepped closer to her bedside. The girl's eyelids fluttered again. She struggled to speak, voice dry, barely audible. "Me? Michael?" He leaned closer, giving her space but letting her know he was there. "Yes, I'm right here. You're safe." Tears streamed down her temples. "I didn't think this would happen to me. I only wanted to see you up close." Michael's expression softened with heartbreak. "I'm sorry if the moment was too much." Sometimes excitement can rush through your body faster than you're ready for. Her voice broke with a tiny laugh, weak but real. I waited my whole life for this. My parents said it was silly. They said you'd never see me. Michael smiled gently, his eyes warm and shining. And yet, here we are. Sound like you proved them wrong. One tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it wasn't from fear. She reached out, fingertips trembling, and touched his glove. Thank you for stopping. They told me you wouldn't, that the show mattered more. Michael's expression changed. A flicker of pain crossed his face, because he knew exactly who she spoke of was. Management, promoters, people who didn't understand what he understood. Music didn't exist without the hearts of the people who listened to it. The medic cleared his throat. Mr. Jackson, if she can rest quietly for a few minutes, she'll recover faster. Michael nodded. Of course. He turned back toward the girl and spoke in a whisper only she could truly hear. You matter more than the lights or the stage or anything out there. Don't ever let anyone tell you you're unimportant. The girl's lips parted in disbelief. I love you, Michael. He squeezed her hand softly. And I love you. You're part of my family, the family I chose every time I step on a stage. Her breathing slowed, becoming steadier and calmer. The medic nodded to Michael quietly. She was out of danger for now. Michael exhaled, relief washing through his body like a warm wave finally hitting the shore. But then a voice interrupted. A cold, irritated tone from the doorway. Michael, the promoters want you back on stage. Now! Michael turned slowly. A man in a suit stood there, arms crossed, expression impatient. The fans paid for performance. You've already wasted enough time. You need to finish the show. Michael stared at him, a long, piercing, silent stare. Then he looked back at the girl, peaceful now, eyes closed, safe. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. I'll finish the show, he said without looking up. But don't you ever tell me spending time with someone who needed me was a waste. The promoter stiffened, stunned. No one ever spoke to him like that. Michael stood upright again, shoulders back, eyes burning with purpose. He glanced at the medic. Don't leave her side. She's not here for the show. She's here for the moment that changed everything. Michael walked toward the exit, the roar of the crowd rebuilding in the distance, calling his name like a heartbeat he could not ignore. But before stepping through the curtain, he whispered to himself, they'll remember this night, not because of performance, but because we cared. He placed his hand over his heart and returned to the stage as a hero. The stadium was silent in a way a stadium should never be. 70,000 hearts waited, watching, holding their breath. The music had stopped, the lights dimmed, and the man who could command oceans of screams was now kneeling on the floor with only one focus. Her, the unconscious fan, a girl who only moments earlier had been bursting with joy, now lay pale and still in the middle of the greatest show on earth. Michael Jackson gently brushed her hair away from her forehead, his fingertips trembling. He wasn't thinking of cameras. He wasn't thinking of perfection. He wasn't thinking about the persona the world demanded. He was simply Michael, a human being terrified that someone who loved him so deeply might be slipping away right in front of him. Her faint breaths were uneven, shallow, disappearing. Michael looked up desperately at the stunned medical crew. What are you waiting for? His voice cracked, louder than any scream that had ever echoed across that stage. Help her, please. The medics rushed in, but their equipment was still making its way across the barricaded space. Security barriers, screaming crowds, and the sheer immensity of the stadium made every second feel like an hour. He couldn't just watch. He couldn't just stand and hope. Michael leaned down, gently lifting her shoulders into his arms, her head resting against his glittering jacket, as if she were sleeping rather than fading. His voice softened into a broken whisper. Stay with me. Please. Don't leave. Not here. Not tonight. The girl's eyelids fluttered, the smallest movement, but to Michael it was a miracle. The camera zoomed in, showing his face across the colossal screens. Audiences around the world would later say, that expression was real fear, not staged, not performed. Human. Fans in the front rows began crying. Some reached out their hands toward Michael, not for autographs, not for attention, but in a collective prayer for the girl he held. One medic kneeled beside him, checking her pulse. "It's faint," he murmured. "We need to get her out of here, fast." Michael didn't release her. His hands refused to let go. He stood, with her still in his arms. For a few seconds, the audience saw something surreal. The king of pop, carrying a fan like a father would carry a child. His boots stepped slowly, carefully, as he descended the stairs from the stage, ignoring every protocol, every barrier, every rule designed to protect him instead of others. The head of security tried to intervene. "Michael, let us—" "No." Michael cut him off, not with anger, but with a fierce protectiveness rarely seen outside guarded memories of his own childhood. "This is my show," he said, "and she's my responsibility." He continued walking until he reached the backstage entrance. The medics led him, clearing the path. Fans moved aside, hands covering their mouths in disbelief. Inside the medical room, the girl was placed on a cot, oxygen quickly attached. Machines beat frantically. Michael stood there, arms crossed tightly over his chest, as if holding himself together. His breathing was ragged, sweat dripping down his brow, not from dancing, but from fear. One medic turned to him. "She's dehydrated and overheated. We're stabilizing her now. We just need time." Michael nodded. But time felt like the cruelest thing in the world right now. He walked to her side, gently taking her hand into his. His voice quivered. "You came to see the show. You came to smile and celebrate, and now you're fighting to breathe." He swallowed, tears burning behind his eyes but refusing to fall. He leaned closer and whispered words he rarely shared, not even with friends. "You matter. You are loved. And you're going to wake up and dance again. I know you will." The medic stepped forward. "Michael," she's stable enough now. "You need to rest and get back on stage." He tensed, torn in half. The performer inside him said, "The audience is waiting." The human inside him said, "She is waiting." He looked down at her again, the rise and fall of her chest growing steadier. Her fingers twitched under his hand. She was coming back. Michael exhaled shakily, a breath that carried a prayer with it. He squeezed her hand one final time and whispered, "Thank you for loving me enough to be here. Now stay on this earth. Please." As he stood to leave, the girl's hand suddenly clutched his fingers. Michael froze. Her eyes opened slowly, glazed, confused, and then widened at the impossible sight in front of her. Michael?" she whispered, voice barely audible. Michael smiled, but it was a soft smile of relief, not performance. "You scared us," he said quietly. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. "I didn't want to ruin your show." "You didn't ruin anything," he replied. "You made tonight a reminder of what truly matters." She began sobbing, overwhelmed, but Michael brought a finger to her lips gently. "Save your strength. I'll finish the show, but I'll be thinking of you the whole time." She nodded weakly, unable to speak. Michael turned to leave, but just before stepping out, he paused and looked back. "You're the reason I go on stage," he said. "Never forget that." As the door closed behind him, he heard her whisper into the silence, "Thank you for saving my life." Michael returned to the stage with a different energy. Not the electrifying superstar swagger, but the powerful calm of a man who had just fought for someone's life and won. The stadium roared as he emerged, louder than ever, but he didn't raise his hands to demand it. Instead, he held the microphone close to his heart. "This show is for her," he said, voice echoing across the arena. And then, with a deep breath, the music hit. But something was changed. Michael's passion wasn't for fame in that moment. It was for connection, for humanity, for the fans who saw him as more than just a legend, and for the girl who gave him a reason to believe he could still make a difference, not with moonwalks and spotlight, but with something far more powerful, compassion. Tonight would be remembered not for the music, not for the dance moves, not for the history books, but because the king of pop became simply Michael, and he reminded the world that even the biggest star still has room in his heart for one soul who needs him most.